Watercolour is a versatile, portable and spontaneous medium that allows great freedom of method for the practitioner. It demands a great deal of skill, and the end result is often a highly charged private statement capturing a particular moment of time or a particular effect of light. Sometimes, however, these effects can become rather cliched and rather conventional, and sometimes that very liveliness disappears. However, normally speaking, a watercolour is a relatively small piece of work. It invites close scrutiny on behalf of the viewer, and rarely does it make grand public statements. Watercolour can range from translucent effects broadly swept onto the paper, allowing the light to penetrate and reflect off the paper and make a very vivid kind of impression. Or it can be used in a rather opaque way, building up body colour, which isn't translucent but makes its effect through the accumulation of pigment. In more recent times, artists have used watercolour to great effect using very unconventional techniques. This is not to say that artists in earlier periods didn't use such ideas as clipping away the surface of paint with razor blades or using wax crayons to repel the watercolour to make interesting effects. But certainly I think in the 20th century, artists have been able to abandon the idea of painting natural things. They've been able to use watercolour in an abstract way, to use symbols and ideas to fire their work, instead of physical objects in the natural world. And so I think one of the interesting things about the way that 20th century artists have used watercolour is the way that certain artists have used it very traditionally, artists like Gwen John and perhaps even David Hockney and Patrick Proctor, and others perhaps, like Henry Moore for example, have used it in a much more unorthodox way, creating images that are very powerful and very intense no matter what kind of medium they're using. I think that watercolour is still very much alive today. Many artists are still using it because of its closeness to the artist's techniques, that it's something that is intimate, something that they can rehearse within the studio. And by doing so, I think they're prolonging what is a very British tradition, hopefully one that will continue well into the 21st century.
For me, colour is one of the most important things about painting, and I know that when I work in black and white, whether it's oil, whether it's watercolour or acrylic, that I draw, that I don't paint, but it's only through colour that I can actually see properly and that I can organise compositionally a painting. This is how I go about stretching paper before I do the watercolours. I find it's totally different when I work flat and when I work on an easel. I actually have a lot more control working in this way. So to stretch paper, I just normally masking tape around the edge. And I use this, which is, it's just really for spraying plants, but it's very, very handy for wetting the paper. Then I'll just leave it for a couple of minutes until it's dry enough and to start working on. I suppose that there are certain colours that I like using more than others. I love yellow, I love orange, but it doesn't mean that I use only those two particular colours. But when I do work, I do sort of discipline myself to one or two colours in the procedure of painting, so that they can all sort of speak to me rather than having you know, a lot of colours vying for attention. I use watercolours because, for me, they've always been a really wonderful, fluent way that I can touch paper with a brush and with colour. And I love the light that you can get in using a watercolour. And for a long time, I used watercolour simply as a means of doing studies. Quite important studies for larger paintings, and it's really only in the last 2 years that the watercolours have taken on much more value and they've become paintings, if you like, in their own right.